walk through the garden, you better watch your back. Well, way down in the hole.
Front end, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of The Wire. I think it's one of the greatest, not just television shows, but pieces of art in the last couple of decades. I was a huge fan of it. What is it that you saw, you learned, you heard that made you start thinking about the culture of the drug trade and how its impact on the inner cities and that compelled you then to want to tell these stories?
Well, I was in Baltimore, and it's a very it's a drug-saturated city, or it certainly was in the early 1980s when I arrived. Right. This was a time where people thought they could arrest their way out of the drug problem, right? And they actually tried to do that. And what became increasingly obvious to me over the years of covering it was that when you devote yourselves to street-level drug enforcement, when you try to win the drug war, you only have a limited number of resources, limited amount of resources. And I watched the police department in Baltimore, and then I noticed it in other cities with the same sort of problems of drug use. They stopped doing police work. Right. They were arresting people for drugs, and that was presumptive police work, but actually it wasn't. And at the same time that the numbers of drug arrests and the incarcerations for drug arrests went up, and they were small incarcerations, they were 2-3 months city jail because you couldn't put them everywhere. You couldn't build prisons fast enough. Right. Meanwhile, the arrest rates for rape, robbery, murder were going down. And the one thing that makes cities safer is competent retroactive investigation of felonies.
Female gender roles in The Wire. Although Griggs is a female presence in a male environment, she acts masculine. She has to live up to an expectation of masculinity being surrounded by males throughout the show.
Griggs does this by her language used in the show. This goes to show that gender isn't in the body. If you are a cop, you have to be strong.
And there were also feminists who looked at it and said, where are the strong female characters in the police department or in the drug trade, on the drug corners? And we could only profess to say, well, they're not really there in reality. The Baltimore Police Department is an intensely male environment, and so are the drug corners.
How come they know you're police when they hook up with you? And they know you're police when they move in. And they know you're police when they decide to start a family with you. Now, all that shit is just fine until one day it ain't. One day it's, you should have a regular job. You need to be home at 5 o'clock.
You need to call more.
I'm saying. Jesus. I'm turning into McNulty.
Cassie is seen as a sexual object in the show NYPD Blue. After meeting Detective Kelly on the job, they have a romantic connection. There are multiple scenes where they are making love throughout the first season.
The question comes to mind. Why Kelsey is the only one to have an affair with Kelly? Why does anyone have to have an affair with Kelly? Why is it so vital to the show?
gender roles that are more noticeable among the two shows have to do with women and the way they act in a male environment,
as opposed to the men who are expected to act the way they act in the shows.
It is nothing out of the ordinary. Male police officers working in the male environment performing daily tasks as expected.
Violence in The Wire is used as a means of power. This can be seen through gang warfare and retaliation to the police in the projects.
For example, Omar resulted to violence when he went on the drug raid on Barksdale turf. He was the first and last one to fire.
Omar's way of operating is through power and fear. At the end of the same episode of the drug raid he went on, he also made an attempt on Avon's life.
This just goes to show that instead of working with the police to bring down Avon through justice, Omar operates by his own set of rules.
State calls Omar Little, Your Honor.
Faggot.
What is your occupation?
Occupation?
What exactly do you do for a living, Mr. Little?
I rip and run.
You...
I robs drug dealers.
So you rob drug dealers? This is what you do?
Yes, sir.
You walk the streets of Baltimore with a gun, taking what you want when you want it, willing to use violence when your demands aren't met. This is who you are. You are amoral, are you not? You are feeding off the violence and the despair of the drug trade. You're stealing from those who themselves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
Just like you,
the culture of drug. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game, though, right?
Similar to The Wire, the police officer in New York used violence as a way to gain authority.
Here, Detective Sipowicz pins down his nemesis, Alphonse Giardella, in an attempt to beat a conviction out of him. Sipowicz flags Giardella's crony, maintaining authority of the situation.
When you were 8 and you had bad traits, you go to school and learn the golden rule. So why are you acting like a bloody fool? If you get hot, then you must get cool. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? You chuck it on that one, you chuck it on.
Repairs. Come on. A little girl was taken from Washington Square Park this morning. We know you were involved. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, you are going to tell me what happened to that little girl. I want a lawyer. You can't do this. No, this is just us, Ken. There ain't going to be no lawyer, no court, no wrongful conviction. Because you're going to take care of this right here. Some guy took her. Oh. I gave her a ride. She was looking for her dad. This man I know, he threatened me and took her. Who's this guy? Randy somebody. I know where he lives. I can take you there. This guy, he's a liar. And he'll probably tell you some story that I gave the girl to him. Move your ass.
Sipowicz is depicted as violent, and this is demonstrated through traditional forms of masculinity. Masculinity feeds off of violence.
Sipowicz behaves in a manner consistent with hegemonic masculinity because in the first episode, Sipowicz resorts to violence against Alphonse Giardella by ripping his wig off and brawling with him in the street. He resists change in the beginning by resorting to alcohol to deal with his life problems.
Yeah. You're going to central booking to get processed for beating your wife.
She's pressing charges?
Oh, she sure is.
So, okay, now I gotta get an attorney.
You like smacking people around, Frank?
No, there's a lot more to it than that. No! No!
Let's try smacking me around, Frank.
Guard!
He left. Hit me, Frank. No! Or do you only like hitting women?
You leave me alone!
You're going in the system. I'm gonna be there waiting for you. Candy bar. And you're gonna because if I'm very unhappy right now, Mike.
Watch my food.
Watch your food. I'll give you food. Don't you ever waste my time again.
He does go through changes and adapts throughout the show due to the introduction of gay co-workers, a minority boss, and a spouse.
He transforms from hegemonic masculinity to a more tolerant masculine formation.